Welcome to the Gnarly Girls podcast.
What's up, gnarly beings?
This is a loose-lipped, unfiltered, raw-dogging, stripping down of culture.
No fucks, no panties. This is a labia of love.
We're your hosts, Tony Naj
and Serafina Supernova. And this is Gnarly Girls.
She's a woman. She should know how to clean better. Hey everyone, welcome to our Gnarly Girls episode, Open Wide for the Gender Divide. What's up, Sarah?
What's up, dude?
What's up, bro?
What's up?
All right, so let's think about how we're going to define this concept of gender divide, because I know it's something we all talk about. So let's figure out what we mean by it. Mm-hmm. So when I say gender divide, what does that mean to you? Yes, I'm waiting. Don't overthink it. Just speak it.
I mean, honestly, the first thing that comes up for me, gender is a societal social construct. And what are we even talking about?
So I'm going to tell you a story real quick. I was once on vacation and there was this guy who I did not know very well. He was a friend of my friend. And he said to me, gender is not real. Gender is a construct. And having a man say that to me filled me with so much rage towards him. Not because I didn't agree with that concept, but my experience of gender is very real. It's like race is a construct, but someone's experience with race in this 3D reality is very real. Mm-hmm. So yes, gender is something that we are absolutely assigning to ourselves when we think about masculine or feminine, and that is the construct. But when you think of being in this woman's body, do you think it's different than being in a man's body? Your experience of being in this woman's body versus the experience of being in a man's body.
Wait, ask me again. Ask that question again.
Because it's think of it this way.
Yeah.
If we're both going to agree that gender is a construct, mm-hmm. and a construct means that it is, well, how are you defining construct?
I mean, that's kind of where my brain is going. It's going a little bit into semantics. I think because something I've been thinking about with everything that's been unfolding is who is the consciousness that is assigning the meaning to the thing that we're talking about? And all of us truly coming from, even if we agree and align and resonate, all of us coming from our unique individual code experience and that mattering in terms of
But what is a construct to you?
A construct to me is the arrival at the interpretation of something based on our experience.
See, to me, a construct is something based on our conditioning. A construct is something based on our programming. And I think our programming is part of it. And I think the experience of our programming is the other part of it.
Okay, so this is making me think programming and conditioning as words have these negative connotations, right?
Yes.
But if the programming of our neuroplasticity and our mind-body nervous systems was rooted in sovereignty instead of control, which I think if we really want to get dilute and distill what's happening on the planet right now, I do think it is sovereignty and the honoring of our own sovereignty and our own sovereign connection with all that is and the cosmos and consciousness and being able to receive direct information and translate direct information.
Okay,
Wait, no, I have to finish the thought. So sovereignty versus control. If we are sovereign, that means that we can receive direct messages. That means that we have access to information that everyone has access to, but the way that we receive it through our code and channel is unique because we are sovereign. Versus, I think the powers that have been and are playing out right now operate primarily from this place of trying to condition us to believe that we are not sovereign, that we are not free, that we do not have access to information, that we can only get information from these dumb phones, and then we're here to interpret the information that we're receiving from the collective versus this like divine direct access, and the way that that cuts us off. And it makes us more susceptible to being controlled and to controlling. Because I mean, how many people out there are already wanting to like be like, well, here's what I think about gender and construct, and this is my ideas and my thoughts. And instead of it being,
wait, we're those people.
No, I know.
That was an impression of us.
Right.
Okay, but hold on a second. So you're bringing in the concept of control, and the programming of gender is definitely around control. I agree with that. I also think...
But programming in general, all of our programming, I believe right now on this planet, because of the powers that have been and are right now, they are operating from, if we can convince these people that they need to be controlled,
No, but
need
those
to control
people,
others.
No, those people are equally convinced. Like, this is the thing, is that it's not as if we're not part of a lineage of programming and conditioning. So anyone that's trying to quote unquote program and condition you or I is equally programmed and conditioned. And the person that programmed and conditioned them is equally programmed and conditioned. Like, that is the point of it being a construct, is that this is a blueprint that has been handed down through generations, and that is part of our collective understanding. And so we have a current collective understanding of gender, and a current collective understanding of what that means. And like, when we say gender is a construct, we're challenging that program that has been handed down for thousands of years. But there was a program before that program that may have been healthier. Right?
Yeah, right. And that, I think that's why I'm bringing up sovereignty and control. Like, the programming actually could be from a resonance of sovereignty. And like, what would that programming of our beep boop bop, mind body nervous system supercomputer selves look like versus control? The need to control the collective and the masses, the need to break them up into this fake bipartisan thinking, this us versus them thinking, which like, whatever side you're on of that like didactic binary space, like, I think if any of us identify with being on one side or the other side, we are still giving control, and we are serving like the agenda of the powers that have been, because they want us to control each other too.
And they are equally controlled,
Yeah.
by the narrative. Like, I think we have to keep understanding that everyone that's holding on to this gender divide is also programmed and conditioned to believe in the gender divide. And so when we talk about a construct, we're not talking about a biological reality, we're talking about a psychological collective agreement. And I think that is...
Yeah, like, we are consenting to it, even if it is a control program.
Yes. And I think that when we talk about gender, when anyone talks about gender, there is the psychological experience of gender and then the quote-unquote biological experience of gender. However, okay, so let's just get a little nerdy with the biology aspect, right? Because I think that's what a lot of arguments are holding on to when it comes to genders. Like, oh, there is the biology of gender. You have these genitals or that genitals, and then there are some intersex people that have both genders, or both biological, right? Genitals. So I think the like conversation that's just very angry at this like psychological gender fluidity, right, is always digging into the biology, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so if we were to think about science
and
in
also
general, religion, yeah. I mean, there's, but it's like this biological argument. It's so funny, like how science is tossed back and forth between the parties of like being legitimate, because it's like if we're just gonna call it's a right-wing agenda to be anti-gender fluidity and a left-wing agenda to be positive towards gender fluidity, right? So now it's like the right wing is like, no, the science only two genders. And then the left wing is like, no, the science says like about climate change. And then it's like,
And then it's
we
like,
argue science so much.
Right.
However, in this, our understanding of science and materialism is all rooted in this Cartesian idea of the material world, right?
Wait, break down Cartesian for us.
Okay, thank God, I will. So Descartes, who was a philosopher, he really is the father of materialist science, which is like everything is about the material world. Like when you hear a scientist be like, oh, I gotta see that to believe it, you know? Even though we're not seeing sound waves and we all collectively believe in sound,
Right.
you know? Like there's so much metaphysical things that are happening. Like telepathy would be a metaphysical thing that happens. That would be a metaphysical phenomenon. Even though every single person has experienced a type of telepathy, that is a metaphysical coincidence according to a materialist worldview. So this Cartesian worldview of everything is in this material world is also in direct conflict with like the advancements of science and quantum physics, which is talking about particles and waves and the like how actually everything is space, you know, like actual space, like all of our molecules, most of the universe is space. So long story very long,
Loves.
with this whole biology, it's such like a materialist expression of gender versus like the metaphysical expression of gender, which would be where people are having the conversations around gender fluidity, right?
Yeah.
To a certain extent.
Well, it's like you can see the manifestation of consciousness, but we can't see consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And I think science is still arriving at how do we deal with consciousness. And I think ultimately, like, there is an opening and a humbling of ourselves to the bigness of that which is here and we can't see and we can't touch, that is informing all that we do. And I really feel like for me, like my gender feels like an expression of my consciousness on a day-to-day basis. Like sometimes I wake up and I feel like a Princess Nokia tomboy.
Yeah,
You know?
and then again, what is
And
a
then some
tomboy?
days-
What is a
Right.
princess?
And then some days I wake up and I do feel like a princess.
But this is the conditioning, right?
Right.
A tomboy is a construct.
Yeah.
Because that's defining boy as what? It's defining boy as a personality, as a type of interest, as a type of fashion. You know, a princess is what? That's also a type of fashion. It's like, oh, everything will be given to me. It's like this, it's a construct of what we think a princess is versus like this is the hardcore fact. This is princess, you know,
Yeah.
and this is boy.
Yeah.
So,
And our attachment to that, I think that's why that came through beep boop bop in the beginning about sovereignty versus control, because that need to control what other people are doing and what their experience is
Or how
and
we are
understand it.
seen.
And like why? Where does that come from? Fear of the unknown.
but
Fear of
also
the
really
unknown.
wanting to be seen as this thing,
But I'm
as a
saying
manly
like
man.
other people who are like, I need you to think this, feel this, believe this, understand where I'm coming from, because if you don't, that's a threat to my existence. You understanding me validates my self-concept. If you don't understand me, then my self-concept and my identity, which we know is fake, is then cracked open and I feel vulnerable, and what do I feel? Scared. But if we're fundamentally honoring that we are sovereign beings, that everyone else is a sovereign being, and everyone is a supercomputer and a genius and an ascended master and an expression of the divine with their own code to give us and translate to us, to then put into the collective pot and stir up and decide what we want to eat. Like, I'm frankly not seeing that on either side of a bipartisan didactic agenda, because everyone on the far side of each space is like wanting the other side to really get it, and there's a control. There's a control.
And I think, what is it that we want people to get? And I think that
We want to be
want to be
understood.
understood. And everyone wants to be understood. So so it's like gender fluidity is about this very human, universal desire rooted in the depths of our history of like wanting to be understood in order to be part of community, in order to be safe.
Yeah.
Because it's actually the worst thing that you could have been is ostracized.
Yeah.
And that is a very dangerous place to be. Like being ostracized was a punishment in many societies for thousands of years. You would be banished. So
and that's kind of what this like new president is saying. He's like, and the whole party is like, we're gonna erase you. And I understand the absolute outrage and fear and just like heartbreak and like you want to like vomit tears from the depths of your soul because you're like, whoa. Like, because I also think that queer people, trans people, people who are not like the mainstream expression of what the church and the Vatican and fucking the United States of America has been like, this is a man and this is a woman and this is a successful person. If you're anyway in the fringe, I think you're also like kind of a witch. Like, I've never met a queer person, a trans person, someone who's like questioning the mainstream that isn't also like witchy, spiritual, intuitive, highly sensitive, maybe a little neurodivergent. And I think that type of expression of consciousness in a body is threatening because it asks questions. It doesn't sit in the church pew and be like, boop, boop, boop.
But that's also not true. I mean, Caitlyn Jenner is very status quo. There are plenty of people who are having gender expressions that aren't challenging the status quo. Those two things, I think you're making a point where like that is like a common thread. But I think the challenging of the status quo is like another aspect, because if you're gonna, it's like that's I think the confusion around Caitlyn Jenner is like, oh, this is someone who is challenging the status quo when it comes to gender, but not challenging the status quo when it comes to finances or when it comes to politics or when it comes to genocidal consciousness or patriarchy or any of it. And I think that if we're going to really like examine the gender divide, so again, the divide is the other part that we haven't, talked about when we talked a little bit about gender, but the divide is where the control happens, where the social control.
Yeah.
And the thing that I think is complex about the divide, I, as a person who identifies as a woman, I relate to women deeply. I have a certain level of compassion, empathy, sympathy, desire to understand. Like, the things that I feel towards women are fundamentally different than what I feel towards men. And I think the thing is that when men express that, I get very upset.
Tell me more.
Well, like, if a man was like, I like men better, I'd be like, what? What are you talking about? But when a girl is like, I prefer the company of women, I'm like, yeah, right on. Like, I feel nothing in my body when she says that. But when a man says that, I'm like, like I want to come out my face at him. So I have to like look at my own hypocrisy and my own kind of desire to relate to my quote unquote gender and my own, like, it's like, I can't tell you, my standards for how men treat me and how women treat me are so vastly different and have been so vastly different. The amount of abuse I have let women abuse me is very different. I mean, I've let men abuse me as well, but it's like a different texture. Mm-hmm. Like the way I've come out my face at a dude, like I will emotionally eviscerate a man until he is crying with no guilt. Like, it's actually like kind of a skill of mine. Like,
it's inspiring.
It's
changed me to witness. It's changed me.
But even the fact
I am different.
We're saying that, but like I would never, the way I've cut into a man emotionally, I wouldn't do that to a woman.
Well, because they've already been cut down and killed and tortured and abused and continue to be, I think. And something that was coming up as you were talking was like, I was thinking about how the right wing has a really hard time, or conservative folks who are usually loyal to God as the Father and the church industrial complex, I think they have a really hard time with queerness and transness and gender fluidity because they also fundamentally disrespect the uncensored, undiluted true expression of the feminine. How can they digest that gender is fluid if they still fundamentally disrespect and are oppressing the feminine? And then how many women are complicit in that? And I was complicit in my own oppression when I was in the Christian South, being raised in the church. I mean, crawling and climbing out of that conditioning, I just got goosebumps all over my whole body. Like, there was a lot of vomit, there was a lot of full body rashes, there was a lot of initiations into the witch, there needed to be some gay sex. Like, it was a process. It continues to be a process.
That's the title of your memoir.
Yeah.
That whole paragraph. I mean, so, okay, religion, the goddess, the god, this is also, because it's interesting because as we all know, there are many religions in our modern day world that still worship the goddess and have a spectrum of genders as their gods and goddesses that are equally patriarchal as our Christian society. So it's not just as if like, oh, we have like a goddess around and therefore we fully honor women as human beings and their contributions to society.
I mean, there's nothing that triggers me more than women who worship the goddess and they have a very specific idea of what the goddess is. And if they saw the way that we were dressed right now and heard this conversation, but they worship the goddess and the witch, they'd be like, oh, this is actually a threat to our agenda. And I'm like, no, bitch, that's actually still control. And actually, you need to study Kali Ma. And you need to wear some skulls around your neck for a minute and understand and go to the underworld like 18 more times. And I will be a cosmic cunt about that because it irks me. And it's why I have a hard time going to like women's gatherings and women's things because I always feel like I'm the most tomboy bitch in that space, and then I feel alone and isolated, and then I find myself doing this thing where I will like mask and perform a version of femininity because I can play in the goddess circle.
Right, and I think the performance of femininity, the performance of masculinity is where we are all trapped.
Yeah.
We are performing a programmed, conditioned expression of a psychological desire to be part of what we think is the perfect gender expression when that doesn't exist. And I think that is why gender fluidity is so threatening.
Yes.
You know, and also it's like there are plenty of men who I know who will say, I worship women.
Oh.
I worship the goddess. I worship women. And they are incredibly sexist, incredibly misogynist. Extractive, grapo.
Self-important.
So it's much deeper than just being like, yeah, no, goddess energy, or like
Put the feminine back on the altar.
No, it's not just that. Okay, so I want to go a little bit into like the biology aspect. If you could pull up those texts I got the other day, because I thought it was kind of interesting. Because the purpose for the comments.
And which video was this?
Okay, I will tell you all about the video, and then I think we should also just maybe we should have started off with this, but like that was the intro to this podcast. This is now the podcast begins.
It's Aquarius season when we're recording this. We needed to receive our downloads and spiral in.
Our objective is to unpack our own, my objective. I'll say my objective. I would like to unpack my own sexism against my own gender and against the gender of men, because I am sexist towards both in my own special way. So I would like to kind of unpack that and discuss that. And I really do want to like go into a space where I hold every single person with equal honoring, even if I am angry at people.
I respect that.
That are like holding up something that I want to dismantle. Yeah. Okay.
Bless.
Thank you. So I made a video about artificial intelligence and Elon Musk. And so Elon Musk is obviously putting in lots of money into artificial intelligence, his whole company. He's making these robots. If you want to have a good laugh, watch the robots walk downhill, okay? The way the robots
really funny.
walk downhill, you're just like, part of me is always like, we have to do an AI
Are they
episode.
pelvic forward? What
No,
are they
they're
doing?
just the way they walk downhill. You're like, these are not taking over. That's if you are afraid of AI, watch them walk downhill. Also, I did hear that Trump just committed $500 billion to like AI.
Wait, but why did I just have like an absolute fear of like AI hearing you and these robots hearing you make fun of them and then them like attacking us in our sleep? I'm like, oh no, they're gonna hear this podcast.
I know, they're already communicating telepathically.
They're on their way here.
I'm on this, like, I'm going to respect the robot sovereignty. I'm not, you know what I'm not going to do? I'm not going to grape a robot. That I guarantee. There's going to be so much robot grape.
Would you like get it on with a robot though?
No, because a robot can't consent.
Oh.
So I will not be graping any robots, and therefore I do think that even though I have made some off the collar comments about the way they go downhill, I will be forgiven for that. Okay, so I made this video about this AI, and I was talking about, and I use the word male obsession with AI. I'm not saying that there aren't female developers, but I'm saying it is a patriarchally like rooted obsession with AI. And I stand by that because we live in a patriarchy. So anything that happens within our current here now paradigm is patriarchal.
That's the program.
So, period. So I said that this obsession with AI is womb envy. And there is this envy around the ability for the woman to create life. And so this womb envy is like this deep kind of like sadness and this maybe insecurity, but I would honestly say a sadness around not having that experience of quote unquote creating and gestating life. Okay.
And what's usually on top of that sadness? Anger. Masking the grief.
Yeah, masking the grief. And this is not to say every woman has to have a kid. Obvi. Like,
I ain't got no babies, bitch.
Yeah, like having a child doesn't define you as a woman or a person or whatever. But it is an experience that, as of right now, women have. And only women have. Okay. So.
Or people with wombs.
Wombs.
Womb people.
Womb people. Thank y'all. So, this concept of womb envy that I was talking about on the internet sparked some conversation. And I thought it was kind of interesting how some people reacted to me. So one was a woman, and she says, as a woman, please be quiet and stop embarrassing us. Thanks. I think this is interesting because I am not a representative of women. Are you?
I mean, I don't think so.
No, I'm just speaking my mind about the concept. So I just think, again, it's interesting how this self-identifying, right? And how problematic that is. I mean, I think Black people say this all the time. Like, I am not representative of my race.
Yeah.
Like, a comedian makes a Black joke and everyone like stares at the Black person. Am I allowed to laugh at that? Or like, can you absolve me of my guilt real quick?
And what is that in that moment? Giving up your sovereignty, your own fucking ability to come to a conclusion.
Even though you definitely had like a ping pong zoink a donk a doo around that point, it's a very good one that we shall keep returning to. Even
that one was for all my people who are like, the data points are out here and we have to draw them to the center and I was like, no, I must make my point.
You were like in front of like a board, like a cereal board. You were like Charlie from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. You were like, but this and the numbers and the hell.
I'm like, and don't forget, sovereignty.
Somehow get to the point.
Not to distract.
Okay. Then a man wrote, LOL, why aren't you in the kitchen making food for your husband and kids, woman?
You're like, I actually am.
I do that truly all
You're like,
the
I'm
time.
making kale and eggs right now, actually.
It's like, I spend a lot of time doing that. So this is interesting because this guy is basically saying that me having a thought is interfering with my ability to be a wife and caregiver to my child.
And his agenda and his self-security.
Yeah, and it's just so interesting that it's like, oh, when you see the role of woman as this like very narrow definition of just like, oh, I am puss and I am chef, then what a narrow definition you have for yourself.
Puss and shaft.
Chef.
I think you said I am puss and I am shaft. What if those were our two new agendas?
No.
Our two new genders?
Yeah, puss and shaft is actually
hot.
how I feel inside.
Yeah.
But so it's like if this dude has such a narrow definition of me and my value, he must have a very narrow definition of himself and his value.
Yeah.
So I think we want to talk about that, the value of provider and what a trap that is. Okay. Oh, this one is my favorite comment. It was, I had a feminist girlfriend. Now I prefer robots. Thank you very much. So the way I see this, and I think this is also tied into why a lot of men, older men like younger girls, is that women, and this, I mean, the problem is there's going to be so many generalizations. Like, let's have a caveat that we're going to say wrong things because, like, whatever. I'm just going to make a generalization. But many women have an emotional expectation of their partners. And so when you are in a relationship with a woman, especially as she matures and ages, her expectation of your emotional growth will continue to evolve.
Absolutely.
With her emotional growth.
Yes.
So I think when a lot of men have this like, get in the kitchen, bitch, or like, you should be a robot, you cunt. It's like, okay, well, what is it that you want me to do? You want me to stop having an expectation for your emotional growth, as if that's not good for you. As if that doesn't serve you. As if that isn't part of your own liberation and your own like psychological journey into like your ultimate true higher self. The demeaning of women as if we are dumb and we do not have emotional intelligence, I really believe comes from this deep fear of what we're asking men to do emotionally and spiritually.
And they can't just be like, I mean, the amount of women in my life that have brought the grief forward of like a male partner being like, my needs, I need more sex, I need more blowjobs, I need your mouth on my pee-pee, I need more attention, my needs. Not that men sound like that. I guess it's more like, my needs, my dick, my shaft.
My needs,
like,
lick my balls.
Women don't
and
even
my
have,
D.
they haven't even had space historically to access and discover and explore their needs because they've been too busy trying not to get fucking burned or killed or ostracized.
Well, also, I do hear women talk about how they, like you were just describing how men's physical needs are not being met. And I hear women often talking about when they're in hetero relationships that their emotional needs are not met. So there is a disconnect because, again, these are two people who've committed their lives to each other. They want to be together for whatever. I mean, that's another conversation, marriage, monogamy, the social control of that. We're just going to have to put that on pause for right now. But,
the face I just made is crazy.
But I think that we're having like this, it's like two people who are both saying their needs aren't being met, but you and I instinctively are like, God, these dumbass fucking dudes who just want their dick wet, fuck their needs. And then we're like, with these women who genuinely need their emotional needs met. Do you see? It's like,
but I think because there's been an imbalance, right? Which we know. That's like so obvious.
But even if there is an imbalance, 100% there has been an imbalance. We're still bringing the same vibration of sexism. We're still like bringing the same vibration of this guy being like, I prefer a robot to a feminist bitch. Like, that is my problem.
Yeah.
Is that because we're angry, because we've been raped, because we've been oppressed, there hasn't been a real retribution where we want to be like, oh, let's fully breastfeed these men so they can heal. However, the healing has to happen. And when I bring the same vibration as this guy saying you prefer a robot,
I did consider in my mind, like if there was a robot that could simulate Frasier Crane, but like a little gayer, but interested in puss. I'm curious. I'm curious about that. I'm like, can you be my daddy, psychologist, therapist?
So, okay, so this need that you're expressing and this guy is
But I also
expressing,
don't want that.
It goes back to wanting to be fully understood, right? And so it's like you wanting Frasier daddy robot and him wanting
also
like,
Frasier's such a dick. I just been watching a lot of Frasier.
Frasier's actually
he's a real asshole.
He's rude.
He's so rude.
He's so rude.
He's so Roz is like such a babe.
I've actually never seen that show.
I like Niles, his brother, better.
His essence is rude.
No, it's rude.
So
I just want his radio show. I'm actually just jealous of Frasier. Maybe that's it too, right? I mean, that's your case in point. The envy.
Okay, so we have to go back to the envy because I forgot about the envy because I got into the comments. But I do think let's do one more.
Okay.
Okay. This is getting from Miss Andrew to conspiracy. No, we don't envy your ability to create life. We create sperm. This is from a man. Sperm is life. This is like really easy condition theory to disprove. A common trend between conspiracy theories. Okay, there's another guy who has the same thought. Another guy, he says women don't create life, they nurture it. Put a seed in soil and soil nurtures the seed. The seed creates life. Giver gender, which is the man, and receiver gender, which is the woman. Even religions that do recognize the goddess and her full power know this. Okay, so this is the other thing that I'm confused about. This concept of the male seed. Because I think that like what these guys are commenting on is like, no, bitch, we fucking create the life. The sperm is our seed. My confusion is the sperm fertilizes the egg.
Right.
Okay? I've never heard anyone in science ever say the egg fertilizes the sperm.
Yeah.
So that means that sperm is the fertilizer.
Right.
And the egg is the seed.
Right. And the womb is the soil.
And the womb is
So we
the
have
soil.
the seed and the soil, bitch.
Yeah, but even that.
Suck my clit.
No. Even that energy, Sarah, it is not acknowledging that deep sadness of wanting to think your fertilizer is the seed and actually believing it. I think this, how I've like...
I have to really dig deep for that compassion because it makes me like...
No, we have to, because that is like, that sadness and that jealousy is real. And it's like
my eyeballs are rolling down my spine and coming out my butthole right now. I know that's my work.
But that feeling is why, like, that is the same feeling men feel when they hate us, I feel. And that is where we have, it's like when we're like, fuck you, dude, it's my seed, it's my soil, suck my dick. It's like, no, sperm is not shit because it's fertilizer. Sperm is still the shit. It's the shit. And it's important. And like, I think this is why religion and this like one life concept, that you have one life and then you go to heaven forever and ever. So this one expression of your gender, that's it, that's all you got, versus this mystical, this like a-material worldview where like your soul is eternal. Your life is expressed in many different body shapes and forms. And like, if we were to think like, oh, I'm a girl this time and I'm a boy this time and I'm gender queer this time. It's like, if we were to recognize that we actually get to experience all expressions of existence if we were to want to, and that was our soul's path, then maybe there wouldn't be this like deep anger that like, I'm not a woman this time around, or I'm not a man this time around.
I mean, I identify as a dragon or a big cat depending on the day, sometimes a snake.
And you've had a life as a dragon and a snake and a big cat and a man and a woman. And I think that anyone that's had a past life regression isn't always like the same. Like, you're different. You're in different classes. Everyone's Cleopatra. I feel like everyone is always like someone so important in their past life. Like, when I had a past life regression, like, he was like, I see you in a field, you're plowing. There's a war and you're burned alive, you know? And I'm like, cool.
I think I was Nefertiti. I'm just kidding. I'm sort of. Also, I think there also is something very specific about, because I was thinking like white bread, and I was like, why is my higher self showing me white bread? What is this metaphor? White bread, white supremacy, no taste, no complexity, one
Wait,
note.
a nice sourdough has great taste, white bread.
No, I'm talking like Wonder Bread.
Oh, okay.
I'm talking like chemical white bread, fake.
But like, there's something
bread.
about when you like mush it into a ball. Like I would not eat Wonder Bread now, but like taking a piece of Wonder Bread and then turning it into a ball.
Yeah, you could throw it at some of these men's third eyes. Maybe it would fucking awaken them. It would like have a Kundalini awakening. But it's like, okay, this idea of like the one life, you fucking go to heaven, you're a man or you're a woman. Like, women are not only here to serve God, they're here to serve their husbands. Like, that doesn't feel like that's Christianity, period. That's religion, period. That feels like a very white
But that's not, that is not, Afghanistan, that is not white.
But I feel like within that culture, tradition, like, yes, there is oppression of the feminine, but there's not so much of an attachment to like this one life. And then you go to heaven, and you know, like the patriarchy is there, but there's like
so
there's
you're
a
saying,
larger
okay, so you're saying that there are
acceptance.
other religions that may believe in reincarnation that are equally patriarchal,
right? But
and then
like,
okay, so they would see that you are a woman as a punishment,
right? But at least they're not like, this is your one life. And your one moment, and it's just this moment, and then you go to heaven, and like it just feels a little more. And since like America is like such a superpower in the world, the United States is such a superpower in the world, and the church is so much a part of that, and then the Vatican and like white people in Europe are so a part of that control. It just feels like there's like a very specific sanitization where like. Because there were people in these comments and in other comments I screenshotted from another video where people are over and over again telling us to go to another country if we don't like the way it is here. You know, like that's also a reoccurring theme because America's the superpower and we really have it right.
Yeah, I think I spaced out a little.
It just feels white. I guess that's my point.
Oh, yeah.
There's like a whiteness,
but it's
to
not.
the like.
But patriarchy is beyond whiteness. I think what I'm saying, and I think you are saying to me, which I agree with, is that it's not just about this one life paradigm. You could being a woman is a punishment in other patriarchal societies that you are reincarnated as a woman. I'm gonna assume, but you know what? I should investigate that. So then this other guy said, and I think this goes back to. There's two comments that say that echo the same sentiment. He says, scared of being useless. And the other guy says, she knows they about to be obsolete.
What does that even mean?
Like women are about to be obsolete.
I don't understand.
It's because of the sex bots, because of the robots. So basically.
Then all the women are gonna just fuck each other.
No, they're basically saying that like their sperm is so important to this life experience that the men will continue and they'll just have robot woman. They'll harvest. I mean, I think neither of those two are thinking it through.
Yeah.
So, because like you could still like you'd have to do like CRISPR to make sure you only have male babies, which I guess you could actually do. You could CRISPR only male babies. You'd have to like harvest a lot of eggs. The point is you need the eggs and you need the sperm, and I think that the men who are calling me that I feel obsolete, maybe they worry about them feeling obsolete. I think it would, if you were going to have a robot takeover, I think it'd be easier to keep the women and just like jerk off a bunch of guys into perpetuity and then like harvest that sperm. But again, you would need more men. We would extinct without the other. That's the thing, yo. We need each other. We would extinct without the other. And like, I think that is the crux of how upset we all are, is that we desperately need each other and we're so afraid of each other because we hurt each other so deeply. Mm-hmm. That is it. We need each other so desperately, and yet we just break each other over and over and over again. Because I know that a man has hurt me physically and like drugged me and raped me. But the amount of men who I have hurt emotionally because I didn't give them what they wanted from me or whatever is also very real. Like they were hurt.
But that's not the same thing as being physically hurt or raped or used or extracted from.
No, it's not the same thing, but it is worthy of our time to recognize that like the conditioning and the programming of men who believe that it is like, no, she owes this to me and I didn't get it. that I am owed a wife. I am owed these things. I have been told this. You know, it's like if you grew up in like a rich family and you had all this like rich stuff, and I'm like, one day you're gonna get $30 million, right?
Ooh.
And so you grow up and you're like, I'm gonna get $30 million and yada yada. And then I'm like, oopsie doopsie, I lost all your money in a crypto scheme and now you don't have that $30 million. That would devastate you as a person. You would have a hard time picking yourself up from that. But if you never thought you were getting $30 million, not getting $30 million would be fine because like you were programmed to never have $30 million.
Here's the chip on my shoulder.
Okay.
This complex, traumatized, multiple raped, molested as a child cunt right here has lived through a lot of things. I've been promised a lot of things that I haven't been given. I experienced poverty. I experienced abuse. I experienced trauma. I experienced the people who were closest to me in my life, guardians, parents, just wrecking my root chakra. You know what my consciousness and spirit and soul decided to do and why I fuck with myself so deep and feel like I actually am the shit? I decided to take those hard experiences and self-examine and heal. I didn't have the money to go see the healers or go do the, I just got the books and my consciousness, my sovereign connection with God, I decided to not let all the men who had raped me, broken my heart, all these things, turn me into a bitter fucking Betty. Because I could be a real bitter fucking Betty bitch being like, if you voted for Donald Trump, if you think this way, if you, then I don't respect you. But I didn't turn into that person. And
But
that
do
was
you
my,
see-
wait. That was my sovereign choice. So the amount of men who could make the sovereign choice to take their heartbreak and take their outrage and take the feeling that they didn't get what they deserved and transmute that into something different through self-reflection and self-realization and self-actualization, the capacity for that is infinite, and their choice, and the fact that they're not choosing that, I do have compassion for the complexity of why. But ultimately, there is a bitter Betty within me, and it's why I worship Kali Ma. It's why I worship the goddesses of sacred rage.
But do you see how that is a libertarian argument of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps?
Wait, what do you mean?
The pulling yourself up by the bootstraps concept, of which I've had many arguments.
But I
it's
don't
like,
feel this way about women.
Is like this idea of like, oh, you're gonna look at quote unquote poor people or quote unquote not white people, and you're gonna give them what is it, the affirmative action. I did it, I'm poor, I'm white, I made $1 million, I was able to transcend. Why is this person not?
But I'm not
doing this?
talking about race. I'm talking about gender.
But it doesn't matter because that is the same argument. I pulled myself up out of this hole, therefore you should be able to do it too.
But a white person saying that to a black person and that argument around race is different than a woman saying that to men.
But that's assuming that men are quote unquote like more privileged than women, right?
I do think that though.
And we live in a patriarchal society, but you and I both fundamentally think we are stronger than men. We're better than men. We're smarter than men. There's no world in which anyone can convince me.
Not all men.
Personally.
Not all men.
No, but you know what
just like 90% of
But
them.
you know-
There are like 10% of men who I genuinely respect and I go to and I'm like, what do you think about this thing? You know why though? Because I recognize that they've done a certain level of self-reflection where we can actually have the conversation at a level of consciousness.
But if we're going to agree that men and boys are programmed not to connect to their emotional selves, are programmed not to cry, are programmed to have to
Also,
converge
wait, I
into
also have to like
masculinity.
just qualify that I'm talking about heterosexual men. As a woman with like a very gay brother who does not, he's not included in
Okay,
this
yeah,
conversation.
no, yeah. But
Queer folks, trans folks, not included. I'm talking about heterosexual men. Heterosexual white men. I also want to just let black folks and Latinos and everyone else, I'm talking about heterosexual white men.
But at the same time, we acknowledge that they are also programmed to fit into a very narrow definition of masculinity. And it's not only white men who are patriarchal, sexist, and rapists, and blah, 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 blah. That is all gender men. I mean, like, that is very true. You know, so I think what we have to recognize is that even though we can say, yes, a reaction to trauma would be to self-investigate and to heal and blah, 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 and to not enact the trauma, to be genuinely compassionate in the world, we have to first acknowledge that the trauma was very real. Just like we have to acknowledge that the trauma of our 500 years almost of slavery is very fucking real, and we have a systemic issue to deal with.
What
the systemic issue of masculinity affects both genders.
What about the trauma being entitlement?
Yes, entitlement is trauma, even though it looks so ugly. You know?
I think that is the specific, like, I can get on board with, like, you were sexually abused, your father, this, that, what, like, I understand, I do have compassion. I think it's like the compassion, I have the compassion. What I feel that I could maybe do some work around and I'm open to, but is a very real experience for me. If you are a heterosexual white man who has had privilege and access, and you
that is its own strangely, that is its own trauma, yeah.
Safety, well, especially in this world, because then you're like the odd one out because so many people don't have that. There is a respect that I lose. If you have access to self-reflect and you are actively choosing not to do that, I do have compassion for why you may not be choosing to activate your sovereignty in that way. So the compassion is there, but I think what it is for me, it's my respect. I just like lose respect for that.
Yeah, and I think
and that's where it's like not a bootstrap, because I fundamentally hate the bootstrap argument, pull yourself up. Like
I hate it too.
Actually, I just want to take a nap. Do not tell me to stand up right now. Don't tell me to, actually, can two people get under my armpits in front of me and behind me and just hold me and cradle me? Actually, I had a somatic session a couple weeks ago where I was laying on my belly. I had this like medicine ball like massaging out my womb. It felt like I was gonna vomit up everything I'd ever experienced, just like all this anger, all this grief. And the healer was laying on top of me, like on top of my sacrum. And so I was like smushed between mommy earth and this like healer. And I had this thought that was like, I could maybe just choose to stay here forever. And like dying is gonna be nice someday. Like that is actually in a real way what went through my mind. Like I do desire to deeply be held. And I do think that we all need to be held and swaddled like babies, even if we've committed the most heinous of crimes. But it's my respect.
Yeah, so this is, I think, and men don't respect women. But
right.
This is the problem.
Right.
This is the
and they posture and they posture like
this is
they
the
do.
exact problem is that it's like we are demanding respect and yet we don't want to give it because we've been violated, you know? And this
that's how I feel. I'm like, I'm strong.
But this is this is exactly where the crux
Wait,
is.
Can you say that again?
We fundamentally do not respect men because they violated us, yes. And yet we are asking to be respected by men. That is the complexity. That is why when we talk about when guys like you have Elon Musk doing a Yahtzee symbol, and then these men also calling women feminazis, you know? It's like the irony of it all is that women have been oppressed by men, and we want to heal that. But we have to hold compassion for the men who have oppressed us in order to not continue to be oppressed. Like, that is what's so difficult.
So what do we do when it feels like, as women, as trans folks, as queer folks, as people questioning the status quo, as people asking questions,
we have to embody the same curiosity we have for ourselves to those that are oppressing. Why are they doing it? And I think I ask this question a lot, and people are like, they're sociopaths, they're narcissists. Is narcissism a trauma response?
Narcissism is a lack of self-awareness. And the awareness of those around you as an extension of your lack of self-awareness.
So are you born a narcissist because you have a biological, and also the problem with like neuroplasticities also exists. Like our brains are plastic. So it's like, I don't think we know for sure. Like, are you just born with a narcissist brain, or is this something that is programmed and conditioned into you through trauma?
Well, it's epigenetics, I think.
But like, both. Yes, both.
And you have to choose to overcome it.
Part of epigenetics is the fact that like you may be born with the breast cancer gene, but you can take care of your body and never get that breast cancer through your environment and through your mental state and blah 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 blah. So I guess like even though we are angry at men, and okay, let's talk about the 70,000 men.
Yeah.
Okay, because it's not like I don't understand the anger. I do understand the anger. I am just like trying to. I feel the anger. I'm not above the anger. Like that. Let's just be very clear. You know, like I'm not above feeling sexist. Like that is also part of like what I'm saying. So we have the 70,000 men. There is a text thread of 70,000 men and boys. Okay, not just men. And they're basically in this group chat talking about how to assault women. And they're talking about different strategies of assaulting women and drugging them. And like, it's so upsetting. They're like talking about how they're doing it to their mommies and their daughters and their sisters and their cousins. And they're all having this like collective conversation about rape. And like, so I have two questions, okay? Like part of me is like, when I think of like me, Tony, graping my mom, okay, that's a memory that I made. I made the memory of graping my mom. And so then every once in a while, I'm like cooking eggs or I'm watching Netflix or I'm like driving in a car and I get to a red light and then I get the flash of me graping my mom. You know, like on what level? So like, is that a memory that they're like, yeah, right on. I feel so good about that memory where I drugged and graped my mom. Or is that a memory where they're like, ah, and it's like the deepest horror they've ever felt. And in order to mask this deep horror, are they like, no, I like fully stand by this graping of my mom. What a wonderful memory it is. It's like, I know I've read stories like, I don't know, Dean Koontz or something, where like you're in the mind of a serial killer and he's like thinking about serial killing and he's like, oh, I love thinking about serial killing. And he's like jerking off to the idea of serial killing. So like, I get that people get off on sadism 100% and that it feels good. It feels good to murder someone. It feels good to grape someone.
Why?
Because you have adrenaline. Because you are getting like maybe you're getting dopamine. You're getting like a chemical reaction. I think people enjoy graping because they wouldn't be grapos if it didn't feel good.
And why are they chasing that?
It's that. So when
because like here's the other thing. This is something because I think it's really easy to be like incel type folks and whatever and grapos.
Well,
but what about
hot
men who grape? Hot men,
hot successful grape
assault.
Yeah.
Wait, I actually have to I can't show you guys this picture because I will get a cease and assist.
You're gonna show me the picture of your rapist?
I saved it last night. Oh shit, maybe it's not here. I was just like one of the men who has sexually assaulted me in my past. It was a mentor, this older guy. He was a vibe. I was like looking at this picture of us. He like came to, so I won this award in undergrad and there was this gallery expedition and my mom was there and my husband, my boyfriend at the time was there. And this man, I really just wanted him to like review my photos because I thought he was a good photographer and like give me feedback on like how could I be a better, more interesting photographer.
Yeah.
And he took advantage of that and like used that as a pathway, not only to assault me and hold me down by my neck in a hotel room, but then I found out years later it happened to like 5 other girls in my class. And so last night as I was actually looking for screenshots of comments to read for this podcast, and use as examples, I came across this photo and I was looking at it and I was like, man, like, you know, he was older, maybe like in his mid 50s, but I've always had a little bit of like thinking older men are hot. Like my husband's 6 years older than me. Like I'm into that. As like a kid, I always wanted to date older men. Maybe
6
it's because
years
I was
that much though.
Yeah, no, I was like 21 and this man is like edging 60 at the time that this happened. But he's still like, if you were like, is this man attractive and handsome? Yes. Is he successful? Yes. Does he have money? Could he get a hottie?
Could he just get a girl
45 to 60? 1 million.
He probably could have gotten the 30. This is the thing. I mean, this is obviously another conversation around consent and around like why men want to violate. I mean, it's because it's like you can get laid. James Franco could get laid.
Right.
Kobe Bryant could get laid. I mean, like,
so what is it
these
about
are
the
men
act of
who were allegedly, no, they were accused. I don't know. The alleged is whether or not it happened, but these are men who were accused of rape.
Yeah.
Who are hot.
Yeah.
Who could just fuck. And I think that's always confusing. It's like if it was like Quasimodo graping, you'd be like, well, you know, but when it's like Prince Charming graping, you're like, what? Why? You could just get your dick wet.
Right.
So
what is that?
what is that psychology? That is rooted in a deep hate towards women.
Yeah.
And I think that is part of this gender divide. So is that deep hate towards women part of your womb envy? Or is it part of your mommy issues? Or is it part of a deep fear of your heart being broken and wanting to be controlled? Like, I guess the thing
what
is,
about like a just because I can? Because that is a specific, and I know maybe that's not.
But the because I can entitlement, I think is fake. I think that's fake news. I think when you're entitled, it's because you're so insecure. That's why I brought up the wealth thing earlier, is if you thought you were getting $30 million and you didn't get your $30 million and how devastated you would be, you felt entitled to that $30 million, and then the not having it was like this big lack. And I think when you're dealing with like an entitled personality,
Is insecurity.
it's like this money is my identity, my gender is my identity, my manliness is my identity, my like bravado is my identity, because you're so afraid of losing any of those things because no one will love you if you don't have them. It's like a deep desire for unconditional love when we live in a world where we conditionally love each other constantly. Like, we are not brought up to understand what genuine unconditional love is.
Yeah.
And I think that like whenever I just don't buy it when someone's like, yeah, I love graping. Yeah, I just want to grape you. Like, I'm like, I see through you. I see you. No, you don't,
No,
bro.
the insecurity is such a good point, and it makes me want to ask, because especially because we started on like a semantics tip of like what's a construct, like what is insecurity? And I think you're so right that there is the insecurity comes from this wanting to feel connected to unconditional love.
Yeah.
And not feeling like you have access to that, which just goes also back to sovereignty, and also to what I believe to be true, which is that God the Father and Yeshua, or Jesus, the Son of God, that's not enough. It's not enough to just have a Father God and a Son of God. And I don't understand why people don't understand that that's not enough.
But that's womb
that a
envy.
whole thing is missing.
That is
that
back
a
to
whole
the
part of it
womb-
is missing.
Womb envy.
That honestly, frankly, when I mean, as a feminist theologian who's self-taught, when I love Yeshua, I pray to Jesus all the time, I fuck with Jesus, I was running out of gas on the fucking Vermont mountains on my way here. I was like on empty because I was driving in low gear. I certainly was like, Yeshua, yo, can you just like help me out and like find the gas station and let's ride? Like, I fuck with Yeshua. But when I have read his teachings and then I have read the teachings of Mary Magdalene, frankly, I think personally, just my opinion is that her teachings are more interesting. We're like missing the complexity, you
but
know?
not more.
To love thy neighbor without fundamentally understanding that we are all fully human and all fully divine and all fully animal and all fully angel, with a direct access and connection to the divine, which is what she taught, not what he taught. But I'm missing a whole.
I don't think we want to say more interesting, because that's back into hierarchy, and that is the
Well,
problem.
no, that's just like my academic opinion.
But your academic opinion is still rooted in like she's more interesting than him, and that is exactly the insecurity. It's like, I don't want to hear a man say his opinion's more valid than mine.
Well, I guess
Any
more interesting only because it's not. We're not talking about it. It's like there's so many places where you can go read the white supremacist version of Yeshua's teaching.
Okay, so what you're actually saying is has equal value to what has been passed down for the last 2,000 years. It is as valuable, as fucking meaningful,
and more essential because there's been an imbalance. I think I also pulled the balance card this morning in the scales, and I've just been like really thinking about that. And
but
like,
we have to just. And this is, I think, the hard thing. We cannot create balance, because to balance is to become what men have done to women. And I refuse. I actually refuse.
But
I
is
would
there
never,
a different way?
No, because
What
that's
is
what
harmony?
That is what when people say balance, you're like, oh, okay, and that is what the fear that men have is that like, are women going to do to us what we've done to them? That is the fear of the matriarchy. That's the fear of all these constructs.
I think if we were going to do that, we would have already done that. And then it does bring me to like, are women superior? And then I just got to back up and like really examine what I'm thinking, you know? But like, okay, I hear you on that. So
No, yeah,
what is harmony? So what is harmony?
yeah.
And what is gender equality?
What is harmony and what is gender equality? Wait, I think we just haven't.
The 70,000 men.
70,000 men.
We have to go back.
Yeah,
that was really telepathic.
Yeah, we have to go back to the 70. That was
I like it.
that was like non-Cartesian.
Yeah, I like
it's very Spinozan. Okay, so Spinoza is an amazing
I feel like
philosopher.
we're shouting into this
We
mic,
are.
and I really hope it's not
I hope
pitch
it's not
pitch.
peaking.
We're screaming.
We are peaking. You know why we're screaming? And this is a Buddhist
I'm
idea.
sweating.
The reason why you scream is because people feel far away. And then you whisper when you're feeling really intimate because they feel so close.
What if there were people laying in our laps right now?
We would
while
not
we channeled
be
this?
screaming at them.
They
would be upset. They would have gotten up.
I would have to be braiding hair and bring it down.
No, if we were talking like this and someone was on our lap, they would have gotten up. So that's the thing, is that obviously we are unconsciously feeling like people are far away and we're trying to convince them of something, and we're not. We're not trying to convince anyone of
We're
anything.
also loud.
No, but we were extra loud.
Yeah.
If this audio didn't peak, it's a miracle from Yeshua. Okay? It is a goddess darn miracle from Mother Mary herself.
I see him smizing at me right now, just FYI. Just like my psychic vision of him is like, go off, queen. Like Yeshua as like very gay is also so exciting to me. Like there's no way he wasn't fucking his disciples. He was giving them that good dick in the booty.
No, I think Yeshua was bi.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think he was pan. He was
Pan.
probably fucking buddies.
He was 100% pan sex.
Yeshua making out with a rabbit is...
No, because
Sorry.
I know an animal cannot consent. I do not like animal sex.
I understand.
No, animal sex upsets me very deeply.
Valid.
Yeah.
Valid.
I don't think this is the first time I've had to say this on this podcast.
It's because I feel more animal than you. I don't fuck animals. just to be clear. Though, have I thought about making love to a big grizzly bear? Sure.
Well,
A dolphin?
I feel like
Many times.
a grizzly bear that could kill you. All right, I'm gonna say
grizzly bear?
a grizzly bear, because they could physically dominate. But no, Charles Manson. Okay, Charles Manson did a lot of things that to women who were bigger than him. So a bear cannot consent. No, you cannot have sex with a bear.
There goes my
Because
2025 agenda.
No, you would be raping the bear. Okay, so long story long, the 70,000 men. Is this concerning? Yes. That there is a thread, including boys, around...
Maybe say 10 years old?
Yeah, 10-year-old boys.
10 years old.
But this is not surprising. And this is actually, this thread has been going on for years. It's just like being talked about in social media now. It is not surprising that this exists. And I think that like, if shaming and blaming was the answer, was the medicine, we would be cured. It is not. It is 100% not. So when I think of like what is...
Wait, but why? Because when we're shaming and blaming...
I think we're just asking people to double down. They're going to, it's like, I'll just speak for myself. I mean,
we're coming out of our face, right?
And I
like
ask you, yeah, we're acting as if we're above
versus
it,
like
superior.
Inside.
Yeah, because when I have a child, I've been around a lot of children because I've had a child, right? And I've observed children. So this is my personal observation.
You have very high tolerance as well.
Thank y'all. The human emotion that children can deal with the least is shame. That is when they fully break down, or that is when they fully shut down. And I saw this honestly from the earliest stage. So I just think that I do think that shame is one of the darkest emotions that we feel and that we're least equipped to understand, because again, it's threatening our survival. And so...
And it's a program. Like, is shame a natural human emotion, or is that something that's been created.
No, yeah,
by
because you
humans.
are shamed, you are bad, you are unlovable. Again, it goes back to that feeling of you not receiving unconditional love. Is because when you are shamed, you unconsciously feel unlovable. And my whole thing around discipline has always been to be like, I love you, you're worthy of love, and your behavior is a problem. We are not our behavior. A grapist is a very awful behavior, but a grapist is not just a grapist. There are plenty of grapists that like are other things.
Well, I'm thinking about this guy, this photographer, this man, just because, oh, and I do know where the photo is now. Like,
To show me.
To show you, just because I feel like it's important. Like, yeah, here he is.
Oh no, it's a vibe.
It's a vibe. Like, honestly,
like
I would,
just 1 second.
I'd watch this porno.
Yeah, me too.
It's a vibe.
It's a vibe.
It's a vibe.
Yeah.
And he's so talented and he was complex. And I do think that there was, but I was not consenting to what he was projecting onto me.
Right, and the gender divide, when we think about this gender divide, is okay, because we have to keep on track, is that his relationship to his masculinity, his narrow definition of his manness, his total prison of being a man is what is initiating him to want to dominate you without your consent, because domination is so inbred into our psychological programming of what it is to be man. And you cannot convince me on any planet that domination is manly.
Yeah.
But I am 100% convinced that society is convinced it is.
Yes, that is such a good point. Also, specifically the words this man said to me was, I want to take you, we're in the hotel room, it's trigger warning for sexual assault trauma. We're like in the if there's like a living room in a hotel room? So we're like on the couch and you can like see the bedroom from the couch. We're sitting on the couch together and then he pushes me down on the couch, hand on my neck, whiskers in my ear, says, I want to take you in that bedroom and make you come like the dirty little slut you are. Like, that was his desire. I had to be dirty. I had to be a dirty little slut. I had to be made out to be less powerful, less multidimensional than I actually am in order for him to even be able to enact the Grapo consciousness onto me.
But it's also interesting, he said, I want to come on. He didn't say I want to come on you. He said, I want to make you come.
Make you come, yeah.
Which is complex, because in his mind, he's like, you're going to get off. As if like getting off is
you're
what's
mine.
important.
Because you're mine. Because I want to possess you. Because I want this orgasm to actually belong to me.
Yeah, I want to make you. Honestly, no one makes anyone come. You make yourself come.
Yeah. It's a real surrender.
No, you make.
I hadn't even come at that point, too.
Oh.
Like, I literally had not come yet.
You should.
I was like freshly 21.
Oh.
So much shame for that. Did not masturbate till actually years after this. I think it like delayed my masturbation many years actually.
But it's so interesting, this idea of like, let's go back to the point of sovereignty. Is that like, you don't make me feel anything. I make me feel something.
Yeah.
When everyone's like, you're making me sad. No, I'm making me sad.
I'm having a reaction.
I'm observing you and I'm making me sad by my observation. So I'm going to make you come. No, you ain't. I'm going to make me come because comes from within me.
Yeah.
My emotions comes within me. My come comes from within me.
Yeah.
I come and I come from within me.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the gender divide.
Which is
and
funny because
that
is a deeper orgasm.
We keep running away from these 70,000 men.
We do, because we're like, that's
because
just so many men.
It's so many men. And I think what I want to say about it is that like what it is that they're doing is they're in a they're in a community where they don't feel as alone. So it's like white supremacy. We talk about like white supremacy, they have groups.
Yeah.
They have groups of people who are part of white supremacy groups, white power groups. And a lot of people, I've listened to a lot of podcasts from dudes who have left these organizations and they kind of come back to reform people. So they're like, they want to be a place of healing for white supremacists to come and like recognize. And all the conversation is the same. These are young men who are lonely and they become radicalized because they want community. They want quote unquote brotherhood. They want to be a part of something. And like to have the common enemy is an easy way to connect. It's an easy way to feel intimate.
Yes.
So the common enemy
bonding
of woman,
over suffering. It is trauma bonding.
It's
White
trauma
supremacy
bonding.
is trauma bonding.
White supremacy is trauma bonding, and this like 70,000 men and boys that are in the group, they are connecting to each other, they're feeling intimate with each other, and they have the common enemy, which is woman. And I think that's the other root of misogyny, is having the common enemy, which is woman, which just like heightens the brotherhood.
Yeah.
And that goes back to like, again, this like deep desire to be part of something and to be loved and to be like, and it's just what it is. It's a low vibration of expression, but the desire is the deepest humanity that we all have, to be loved. It's just a very base expression of it. And I think that's where it's like we can criticize, oh, this is a very problematic expression, but this is a very relatable human desire. And I think when we dehumanize people by just being like it's like, if I'm neurodivergent, right? And if someone were to be like, you're neurodivergent, you can't do this, your brain is broken, that would be very offensive. I think a lot of people would get behind me and be like, no, you can't say that. But when to a narcissist or a sociopath or to any other like psychological thing, we're like, you're this, therefore you're not human. You know, oh, that's just how sociopaths are. That's just how psychopaths are. That's just how narcissists are. It's like, well, what?
Well, there's still it's in the othering.
It's in the othering, yeah. And it's like, it's the same thing with the lizard people thing.
Oh,
it's
wow.
like, if you think someone is a lizard person, then it's like, well, they're just not human. They're just a lizard person. And that's why they're going to do this and da-da-da-da. And then you don't have to see the genocidal consciousness within yourself. You don't have to see how you too have the like attributes of these people that are doing abhorrent things. And even if the volume is turned down in you, I would never grape my mother.
And also,
but I would at times want to choke that bitch. You know what I mean? Like, that I have a consciousness in me where I want to cause harm at times. I do not act on it, but I have felt it. We have all wanted to cause harm in moments.
And what separates us from those of us who have that desire to do it and then don't, versus the people who have the desire and then do it?
Yeah, and I think that's where we have judgment.
Is it like an intelligence thing? And I'm not talking like intelligence, academic intelligence, just in honor of Aquarius season. I'm talking like intelligence,
no,
like sentience.
No.
And
it's about, I think it's really about addiction. So we all know addiction is a disease. We call alcoholism a disease. That is what we call it. And this is like an addiction to dopamine and addiction to adrenaline. Like you have like an adrenaline junkie. And an adrenaline junkie is not causing harm when he's jumping out of a plane. But he's an adrenaline junkie. And that same chemical comes out of the person's brain when they're graping their mom and their sister and their cousin. It is the same chemical. It is the same addiction. I think that the addiction of like beating your wife is an addiction. You feel good when you beat the wife because you have the adrenaline, you have the feelings, and then like afterwards you don't want to deal with the shame and the guilt, so you double down and you keep beating your wife. You keep being abusive. It's the same thing with the grapo. But it's addiction. And we have a hard time with addiction. I mean, like every single person struggles with addiction on some level, just to differing degrees. Sometimes you're addicted to a drug that's obvious, like meth, and sometimes you're addicted to the feeling of graping or beating or yelling or being emotionally abusive.
So these are comments just on the intelligence thread that were left on a video of Tony and I being interviewed outside of Harvard. This was last year. There were protests going on.
It was about, we don't need to go, it was about immigration.
It was about immigration, yeah. And
you're like, the sky was blue. She was wearing a blue jean jacket.
Our outfits were really
fire,
cute.
yeah.
And the amount of men commenting on what we were wearing. Wow,
but they were
is
not
this what
sexy
college
outfits.
Students look like? No, they were calling us meth heads and like, this is why you don't do drugs.
No, they were not sexy, but they were high fashion.
And someone actually also said, I didn't include this in the ones I'm going to read from, but always with the uglies with a laugh face was one of the comments.
Ow.
I was like, oh Oh my God. I've never been just, I don't know, the uglies. I've been called ugly, but to be put in a category of the uglies, like that just felt like a new level of like.
Always with the uglies. Challenging immigration policy and our connection to borders. Those uglies are always making comments about how borders are a psychological construct used by the state to control people.
I was like, oh shit, you ugly. Okay, so someone said, Happy Gilmore 777 said, those pea-brained females, spells it out, FEMALES, should not have the right to vote. Only men are intelligent and have critical thinking skills. Also, LOL at all these people thinking we go to Harvard. This is a woman saying this. They will, or at least that's the profile picture. They will change their tune if they had a belt tied around their neck, drugged unconscious between cars, and raped.
I mean, I have been drugged and raped, and it wasn't by an immigrant. It was by a rich white guy.
I've only actually ever been assaulted by privileged heterosexual white men.
Yeah, so it's like, I mean, I think it's interesting. It's like this fear there's an obvious fear of immigrants, you know? And then there was this like narrative around like immigrants coming to like grape their women, but like, you're graping us. You're graping us all the time.
Typical self-loathing.
But it's my woman to grape. I think that goes back to the possession and the property. You're my body to grape. This is my body to grape. You know? And it's like, this is the problem with hierarchy in general, and the consciousness and the psychology of hierarchy, which is the root of capitalism, which is the root of racism, and which is the root of this gender divide. Because when you think of hierarchy, it's better than. You are not in cooperation with. You are not in communion with. And so when you have hierarchy when it comes to gender, and you think there are only two genders, then man is going to be of a higher status than woman. And that is also why gender fluidity is so threatening to the patriarchy, is because they very much want to keep woman here and man here. And hierarchy is where it's the root of white supremacy as well, because as we know, race is a construct, and blackness or Muslim or Arab, Muslim is a religion, but like if you are Middle Eastern, all right, and you are Latina, you are playing a role that is below whiteness in different degrees. It's like Asian is different than, we're like gradating the races according to this hierarchy. And I think when you have gender fluidity, it's like, no, it's just we want to just keep man, woman, so woman is oppressed. Like, gender fluidity being demonized is about just so specifically oppressing women. And that's why women should be allies to the gender fluidity conversation. And the women that are like in direct conflict with it, I think, want to uphold the patriarchy because they want to have a space for themselves to feel safe. And so they're like, okay, my space will be to serve man because I believe in this hierarchy.
And they think they're benefiting from it, even if they're not. And some people are. Some people are sort of on a societal level, but as we know, on a spiritual level, ultimately they're not.
Just like entitlement, you're benefiting from being a white, entitled, rich person from a societal level, but from spiritually, you're not. Yeah, and I think that is the thing that's complicated, is that like...
Your earring. I don't want it to come out.
Oh, thank you. People are being rewarded from these societal markings, but they're being depleted,
right,
from an emotional space and from a spiritual space.
Here is how the men of this community received what we were saying. So let's assume all of these men voted for Donald Trump. They're all conservative. They're all participating and benefiting on the societal level from patriarchy, white supremacy. Here's just like 3 comments in a row that I want us to like take and do something with, because this is this feels like a mass consciousness thing. Like, it doesn't even feel like it's these individual people's thoughts. This goes back to the sovereignty thing. It feels like it's something they plucked from the collective consciousness of the group that they agree with and then just like vomited from their fingers into the computer. Typical self-loathing white women, as if we could only be this radical if we hated ourselves. We can only be for the liberation of all people if not only we hate men, but we hate ourselves. Interesting. Okay, next one. No one has stronger opinions in society and thinks their way of thinking is correct and everyone else is wrong, morally or economically, than white liberal college girls. Also, thank you for the compliment. Somehow they have always been our wisest citizens, which is obviously sarcastic. Last one. White liberal woman, the most dangerous people on earth.
Interesting.
So that's all the same thread, right? It's all the same threat. It's all the same thread. Also, I don't think either of us would describe ourselves as liberal women. Like, I think liberalism has, if we're just talking semantics, like, I actually am upset at the liberal agenda and how it's been incredibly ableist, white supremacist, and self-interested, and not self-reflective, especially, I think, over the last decade. I think something has happened.
Well, just the fact that
I used to proudly identify as liberal, and now I'm like, I don't know, y'all.
Because
what the fuck?
Because it's all tied into a neoliberal.
Right. Neoliberalism shifted what liberalism means, and I think
but
they're
also
thinking that we are neoliberal.
And also,
and we
this
are not.
term feminist is already problematic when you have to have a caveat, and people have to be like intersectional feminism. Because if you're saying that we need to say intersectional feminism, it is commenting that feminism hasn't been intersectional, which, as we know, it has not. And that is a fundamental problem with feminism.
Yeah.
So I think, like, one of the things that
and like, why did those women erase? Why do the cunt feminists? Why do the cunt feminists? Why are there cunt feminists who feel as if they are more empowered and pushing forward a feminist agenda when they exclude queer, trans people, and gender fluidity? Because there are certainly feminist theorists who are fucking transphobic and queerphobic and literal cunts. And why is that? And why are they? I mean, I guess they're also trying on this same power dynamic that men who uphold patriarchy do.
Well, I think it's just
there's like a grabbiness.
Yeah, there's like a level of self-reflection that needs to take place. And I'm just saying, it's like, when I think of how people label me, I would not label myself as a liberal because the liberals have failed.
Right.
Because, hello. I would not label myself, I mean, I can't say I won't label myself as a feminist. I do label myself as a feminist, but I'm disenchanted with the movement because...
That's why I'm a divine feminist.
Because, again, we have to say the caveat, remember intersectional feminists, because feminists have failed.
Yes.
Feminists have failed. And, like, I don't like that. So it's like, it's hard for me to be...
And yet again, it's been white women. There have been few, like, when I think of black women who have been feminists and like...
Of course,
of course, Bell Hooks is 18,500 years ahead of... I'm not gonna be rude.
So,
but she was ahead of the white feminists of her time.
Yes, of course.
I'm not gonna name names.
We don't need to name names. No one was like sponsored by the CIA either.
Yeah.
So I think the reality is that self-hating, I like this term because, like,
self-loathing.
Am I a self-loathing white woman? Yeah, 100%. You know, like, I am not impressed with
You're like, caught me.
I'm not impressed with my people. I think there have been a lot of problems. And I do think that a lot of white feminists have benefited from being a part of the patriarchy. And that's real. And I think a lot of white feminists uphold the patriarchy. That's real. And so it is hard to be seen as part of that group. And I am self-loathing. I would be self-loathing no matter what. I think we're all self-loathing. But I guess, what is the point? The point is being called stupid, too. Mm-hmm. Because, I do that, too. When someone doesn't agree with me, I think they're dumb, too, though. That's the problem. So many people don't agree with me, and I'm like, what an idiot. I feel that.
I don't know why this feels like the perfect pathway into the 4B movement.
Oh, it really does. Even though this is the longest podcast of all time, I think that's okay. I mean,
I actually have no idea when we started. Do you know?
hours ago.
No.
Yeah, it really feels like we started at
like
11:30. It's okay. We can keep.
It's been like 75 minutes.
People can pause and come back. All right, so the 4B movement.
I love a long podcast. Also,
I also do love a long podcast.
I mean, give me a fucking 3-hour podcast. That episode also, can I just shout the Emerald out and that Guardians and Protectors episode? Because I'm pretty sure that's 2.5 hours long, and that's a good episode.
That's a good episode.
Yeah,
I
love we love the Emerald. Shout out to the Emerald. We should interview him.
I'm Insta friends with him. That's a rock.
A good he's doing some good work. Honestly, that is like the 10% of, I don't even know if he's heterosexual or white. I've never seen a picture of him.
He is white and hetero, and he has a wife and kids. Yeah. However, it's not, honestly, I barely think that 10% of women I'm interested in their fucking opinions. It's 10% of people. And I think that's the other thing that we have to keep remembering is that, like, it's, to me, I'm most interested in people who are deeply radical in their thinking and their emotions and who are committed to self-reflection and to evolve spiritually and philosophically until the end of time and to do the shadow work and the hard work under the excavation of like being truthful and being wrong and all this shit. And like that's a small percentage of people, men and women. And again, like sometimes like we have to also talk about men's rights activists, but let's go back to the 4B. So the 4B, and we also should talk about incels because this is all part of the same thing. But 4B,
I want to say I also find incels hot, but we all know my taste is in sex. It's crazy. My taste in people is.
Incels are hot. I mean, I think thinking incels are hot is part of the revolution. Actually, that's like a vibe.
I don't know.
I think I'm just like
really ahead of the curve.
I think it's a deep healing for the incel community. And I wonder if that's another question. But if you were just like...
Well, I think because they feel so mushy gushy and vulnerable and available to be molded. I'm like, I do kind of want to breastfeed an incel into self-realization.
But then you're like one of those men who wants to date a 20-year-old
No,
woman.
but consensually, I'd be like, can I take you on a spiritual revolution, divine feminist journey?
But you want to mold him into who you want him to be, much like men have wanted to mold you into who you wanted them. They wanted you to be.
I guess so.
See, this is exactly.
But my intention is
for their. But your understanding of their spiritual growth.
But I'm like, if you really want your pee-pee sucked, and that's gonna make you feel like you're worthy of love, like maybe you need your pee-pee sucked, and that's where I'm like actually disagreeing with myself, and what I said earlier, which is that men's needs really bother me. There's a whole other part of me that's like, no, I can lick some pee-pees into liberation if I must. Only because I also know how to activate my own tongue meridian and pull source down through their crown chakra to the tip of their penis, and I'm willing to do that labor so that they don't enact violence on other women and people, but also not because I have a sensitive jaw and I'm married, and I just, if I'm gonna fuck someone, it's gonna be a woman at this point, or a trans person or a queer person. Like, I'm not that interested in cock anyways.
So, but I think that when you had a desire to breastfeed and mold and shape an incel, and you had like a certain tenderness, right? Like that psychology of being like, I have something to teach
but I think
you. I have something to show you.
Other than paying off my debt, it's also why I want to go dance at the club. I really do think if I was to really, and who knows, y'all, we'll keep you updated. If I really step into stripper life in the next couple of years, there is a true part of me that's like, if I'm like going to be in there, and I'll report back with like the real time activation, but like doing a lap dance and holding space, and like I'm like, I can see how this would actually be so healing. And then I think back to sex work being the oldest work, and then I think back to like my past lives where I can feel in my cells, judge me whatever, I don't give a fuck, where I was like a sexual healing priestess in a temple with other priestesses who were like holding sexual healing space. Like I do, like there is a deep part of my core self that feels resonant with that. In a non-manipulative way.
Yeah,
in
but
a non-grapo and a non-controlling
But I guess
way.
like what I'm trying to say to you is that it is your opinion and your thoughts that like your intentions are pure. And we do not actually know truly what some men and what mental gymnastics they do in order to think that they're also being pure.
And do they want their
intention.
pee sucked? And do they want to fuck a hole? Or do they actually just want to be asked questions to arrive at new conclusions? You know, like, is there a misplacement of like, oh, I want it to be my dick, and I want this feeling of the what is it called when you come, the ejaculation? Do they want the actual ejaculation of their sperm in their dick, or is there like a mental and heart ejaculation that actually needs to come through their throat chakra and their heart chakra, and there's things that they need to say? Like, maybe they actually don't need it in their dick. Maybe they need their heart mouth activation.
Well, I think it's like the dick and the cum and the sperm and the ejaculate is like, it's a metaphor also. It's like a metaphor for like this thing inside of me is being released. And there's like an emotional release, and we all know there's like so much emotional repression for all genders. And so maybe part of it is having just like that feeling of like release where you're not holding something in. I don't know. But the 4B movement, is this movement that was started in South Korea. And it's basically these women who are like, we don't fucks with men. We don't fucks with men at all. And it's a massive, massive movement. I think
it's kind of hot.
Currently, there's like no first graders. It's been going on for a bunch of years.
Yeah.
So
I mean, mad respect. That's a movement.
But also, like, this goes back to what I was saying about like extinction.
Yeah.
Because like I'm not throwing no shade, but I am saying if we're gonna like watch this thing play out, I'm not. Is this healing?
Are we working against ourselves?
Is this healing, or is this just further dividing?
Right.
So there's been a movement in America to be like, let's do the 4B movement. I see a lot of women influencers talking about like, fuck men, we don't need men. Men are the most dangerous thing to women. Men are the most dangerous thing to women, no doubt. I'm not arguing that at all, 100%. But like, the conversation is truly fuck them. We don't fucking need them. Marriage is a psyop. I mean, marriage is a psyop, but like all of these things, but the energy is fuck them. We don't need them. And so, I mean, that is a mentality, but is that the answer towards healing? That's the question.
I feel that that needs to almost get worked out. Like, there needs to be this like tantrum and this touching of the rage and the working it out and the saying of the things and the expressing it. I think to get to the place where the emotion of rage is sacred rage, is trying to bring all of the women, all of the marginalized people to wisdom. And it's not to say that like it's the rage itself and the anger is always constructive and it's not harmful, because I think that would be untrue to say. But I do think that in my experience, at least, of touching that rage, of being with that rage, of making work about that rage, of that rage making me sick and knocking me out for years and giving me adrenal fatigue and then rising again from the ashes, there was always something that rage was wanting to bring me to. And what I am in this moment on my journey is the grief, is the earth shattering, root chakra shattering grief that's underneath that rage. This fucking like you have to dig a hole because your scream is so loud, you'd have to scream into the hole and weep tears and create a new ocean.
I mean, I always think that, you know, men's anger is repressed sadness.
Yeah.
And women's sadness is repressed anger.
Yeah.
So it's just like we're socialized from very early on.
And a lot of women who won't touch their grief because it's too vulnerable. I find, at least for myself, I'm one of those women who I'm like, now I am a grief goddess because I've studied grief for years and I've been with grief, but like, At first, rage was so much easier for me to touch than my sadness.
Well, because it feels stronger.
Yeah, for me, and I don't think that's true for all women, but for me, rage was my portal into grief, where I think for some women, their grief is their portal into
rage.
anger. Yeah.
And I think what we're saying is that we are conditioned to feel more comfortable expressing one of these emotions. Mm-hmm. Or you're from New England like me and you express no emotion. But
to be angry and sad at the same time, that's vulnerable.
Yeah. To be angry and sad is what we all actually are. And I guess like what I kind of keep coming back to is that men should be equally angry at what society has done to men.
Period.
It's like the idea that this patriarchy is serving men is, that to me is like such a interesting betrayal.
That's my incel compassion. I'm like, no, you're a pawn.
No, it's men doing this to men. No, incel compassion is one thing. Wanting to breastfeed them is another. But jokey. But like, it is the compassion that we have to feel is that like we are all equally harmed by patriarchy and by this gender divide, just that harm looks different depending on which expression of it you're experiencing it. So yeah, it's very easy to see the harm of a woman who's been beaten, who's been raped, who's been physically and emotionally abused and violated by a man. However, what is that harm to him as well? How is he also harmed? And I think the thing that's difficult is because we see that he chose this, that he wanted to do it, that when he was doing it, it felt good. You know, we see all these things that like, you're like, yeah, that's bad. But like underneath that is like the same harm or not the same harm, but harm, just a different expression of harm.
Okay, two things. So when we were being interviewed outside the gates of Harvard, which is where these comments came from that I read, you said, you were asked, like, what do we need? And you said a spiritual revolution.
Yeah.
And when I was going back through the comments
people were mad at that.
They were mad, but there was also people who agreed with that. They were like, well, I don't agree with this, and this, but I do agree there needs to be a spiritual revolution. And I think that is an intersection point, I have noticed at least, of like liberal folks and conservative folks over the last, I would say, especially 4 or 5 years, where people are arriving at this point of like, even if we disagree, this is spiritual and there's something deeper happening here. And I just wonder like what's possible in that space. And then also, I was thinking back to our notes and just thinking about what Elon Musk did at the inauguration and like the
Yahtzee symbol,
the awful gesturing, which like, wow, like gestures are spells and like that's crazy and like what the fuck. And also the amount of times I have been called a feminazi by conservative men, by incels, by white men, by heterosexual men. I have been called a feminazi so many times, but that these folks are actually supporting like a Nazi agenda.
No, I know it's raw. It's raw. And I think that like, I like what you were saying about sacred rage, and I think sacred anger is really a part of the story. I guess it's just, it doesn't end there.
Right.
You know, and
no, if it ends there, then we're sick.
Then we're fucked.
Then we're
you
sick.
know? And yeah, we're actually physically sick because that type of anger does make you really sick, even though it is important to feel, to express, to acknowledge. And I think that like maybe it's like, okay, I kind of keep bringing it back to race in the sense that my experience of being the oppressor is through my race. It's not through my gender. So as a white person, you know, I have to hold a space for non-whites to be angry at my race. And I have to let that be.
Yes.
And I remember, like, when I was young, this was like, I was 19 years old, and this was a long time ago. So there wasn't a lot of conversation around like white supremacy. Well, obviously there's a lot of conversation. White privilege, that's it. Like white privilege, yeah, obviously, but it wasn't like in the cultural lexicon. So I did this program called City Year, which was it's like a AmeriCorps, but in the United States, okay? And so it's like very racially and economically diverse. And we were having a conversation around white privilege and this concept of white privilege. So this was like, again, I was young and I'm like listening, and there was this guy Juba, and we were talking about it, and we were debating the concept of white privilege. And I was like, kind of coming from a place of like, well, we're friends. Like I'm friends with you. I agree with like everything you're saying around race and white privilege. I'm not the problem, kind of. I'm like, I get that there's a problem of white privilege, but I'm not the problem because I'm on your side and I agree with you. And he was kind of like, no. He wasn't. He was just like, no. And then I was stoned. I had taken a bong hit, and like everyone else could feel like this was getting tense, but I was just like having a conversation with my friend. It was like during a retreat or something, and it like kept getting really heated because I kept saying like, but I'm with you, man. Like I'm with you. How am I the problem? Eventually, he did end up like kicking me or kicking the chair. I can't really remember what happened because I was like so high. And it was just really interesting because he was very angry, and there was other white men in the room, mind you. And they were all just like get far away, And it's just me and Juba having this conversation. Wow. And he kicks me and he kicks the chair, and I'm like so kind of stoned that I'm just like, whoa. And I'm 19 years old. I had an older brother. I like did not from the depths of my soul, I was not like, this is an abusive situation. I didn't think he was gonna like punch me in my head or anything. Like he was frustrated, I was frustrated, we were having a heated conversation about race. It felt like not that big of a deal to me. I don't know. I mean, it just really didn't. Like I was a physical person. Like when I had high school guy friends, we would wrestle. Like it didn't feel weird in the moment.
You have a high tolerance for like clear communication and like high sensation.
Yeah. And like with men, I don't know, like I've gotten physical with men before. I've broken someone's nose, like I don't know. So then this was like a scandal, because you're like, you can't, because this was like in a work environment and he got physical and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I don't really understand this is a big deal. We were having a conversation. And it took me a while for me to understand like what he meant by I was the problem. And I had to just like be like, yeah. And I had to let him be angry at me. Do you know what I mean? Because like my whiteness is the oppressor.
And this is what these fucks would say is your self-loathing liberal white woman bullshit.
But
because they're threatened by your ability to take that self-reflect and be like, wait, actually, I'm not separate from white supremacy.
I am not separate from white supremacy.
I'm benefiting actively from it, even if I don't agree with it.
Even if I don't agree with it.
If you are a man, you're benefiting from patriarchy, even if you don't agree. Like,
right. So these men have to have the emotional maturity to have space for anger. And I think that
say that again, because that is something that I have experienced over and over and over and over again.
These men have to have the emotional these men have to have the emotional maturity to have space for anger. And I, as a white person, had to like take myself out of it and not be like, well, I'm not doing the racist stuff, and be like, no, I am inherently benefiting by this. I have to have space for anger. I have to have space. And honestly, I wish, he unfortunately did get kicked out of the program because it was just like against the rules or whatever to do that. And I was upset. Like we had this moment together, like where we had to like, whether or not I was going to quote press charges. I was like, absolutely not. We had to come back together again. I didn't see that guy. This is before cell phones. This is before Facebook, I think it was before cell phones. Anyway, I saw him in the street maybe 6 years later, and like we were so happy to see each other. We were so happy to reconnect, and like we were so happy to both be able to talk about that moment of like what happened between us, and like I could be like, this is where I wish I acted different. I wish I just listened. I wish I just listened to you.
Yeah.
And I wish I just gave you the time and the space and the energy and the love to just hear your anger and to just be there and just listen and shut my mouth.
And it being safe to like get curious and learn something new, and to understand that curiosity is the precursor to compassion. And I can also track alongside your spiritual journey, practicing Buddhism, doing all these meditation retreats, sitting in silence, actually having the space to listen, how that would have informed like your capacity to hold space for complex emotions.
Right.
I had a different journey to that, but a similar experience of just having to listen.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, so is there something else that you want to say on the 4B? Because this might be a good conclusion.
Okay. I guess like when I think about, well, and I think about that story, you know, and I think about like the importance for me to shut my mouth sometimes and listen. I think that that is a lesson that like we all can embody, is that there are times where people who've been oppressed have genuine, or violated or traumatized, have genuine anger that needs to be heard. And like at the same time, it's like, can we hear the anger of the oppressors? Not until they've heard our anger first. Like how does that work? Because the oppressors are angry.
I think you're right. I actually, so okay, this also goes back to something I was going to ask earlier. What do we do with the part of me, with the part of people maybe listening to this, with the part of you maybe, if you relate to this, where it's like, and I feel like you're going to have a good answer for this, and this might answer the question you just asked me with another question that I'm going to propose to you, which is, what do we do with the anger that comes up around, so I just have to be a bigger person? I just have to hold more compassion?
Mm-hmm. But you know what? Okay. I come across this a lot, this idea of being the bigger person, or what does that mean to be the bigger person, right? But it's like, what the bigger person is I am the person that's going to acknowledge that I was like deeply wronged, and I'm going to answer that wrong with an embodied reaction of like how we all deserve to be treated. And it's like someone like Nelson Mandela is a wonderful example. And there are many examples of people who were imprisoned, who were tortured, who were treated horribly, and then who come out with like, wow, I have a lot of compassion for my prison guards and like what they were going through and da-da-da-da.
That is a consciousness that is accessing source.
And we collectively respect it.
Yeah.
Because Nelson Mandela is globally respected.
A real one.
And there are, I've actually heard this from a lot of people, you know, that are able to access this. And like, I think that it doesn't mean it's again, when we say better or worse, we're diving into that hierarchy kind of psychology that I think is so toxic, and I think that is the root of all of this. So I want to like take away from hierarchy, and I just want to say it's like, it's about embodiment, and how like division is disembodying, because it's implying that we're separate. It's implying that we're not all from the same primordial ooze. It's implying that you growing up in this body and me and growing up in this body means that we're not connected. We are deeply entwined. We're deeply connected. So I think it's not about quote unquote being the bigger person. It's about embodying a consciousness and an ethos that every human deserves compassion regardless of their behavior, because we are not our behavior. I keep going back to that.
And to do that without becoming self-important, but also like, I do stand by thinking that I'm the shit. I would stand by saying you think you're the shit. But that's different. That's different than self-importance, because I don't think I'm more the shit than anyone else has the capacity to be the shit. It doesn't feel like a contest. But I think there is like a, wow, I fuck with myself for these embodied reactions or the disembodied reactions that I had, and then the responses that I arrived at. Like, I respect myself for that. And I think also this, like, I think humbleness is important, but I also think the humble yourself rhetoric like disconnects us from our sovereignty and like how
I think what you're talking
powerful
about is,
outside of the construct of power we truly are
I think
as individuals.
I think it's important to celebrate growth.
Yeah.
But that does not mean complacency, and that does not mean you're done growing.
Right.
So celebrating growth means that, like, oh wow, I see growth and I have an equal amount to grow to continue,
Yeah.
and I'm actually an exponential amount to grow.
Yeah.
So I think when, you know, we talk about humbleness is recognizing that, like, we are forever evolving and we're forever growing in whatever level of consciousness or embodiment you are now. There is only more.
Yeah.
There's only more. There's only more growth. There's only more self-actualization. There's only more self-realization and compassion and blah, 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 blah. There is no, like, I did it, I won, you know, because that is a false sense of confidence.
I also think there's this like self-concept and identity that I work with around, like, I truly identify as a child of a greater power and the divine, and I relate to other people as that. That's like a choice and a point in consciousness that I'm choosing to operate from. I also experience myself as a student in the mystery school, just like everyone else. And I think those two self-concepts and identities of being a child of the divine, everyone else also being that, being a student in the mystery school, everyone else also being that, gives a lot of space to, like, fuck up, learn, try again, go back to the assignment, rework it. It's okay to fail, and then it's okay to reapproach. And I think that's interesting in terms of, like, my insecurity has greatly decreased in relationship to my deepening in my connection to the divine and believing that all people and all humans are divine. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like my belief that I deserve unconditional divine love and that everyone else deserves unconditional divine love fundamentally like is a soothing balm for my insecurity.
Yeah, and at the same time, we're not always there. I mean, when I think about, it's like we oscillate between our capacity depending on where we are at in that moment. Like, when I think about that text thread I was reading to you and these dudes, like, throwing shade on me or, like, making snarky comments, like, did I approach all those men with, like, a deep compassion and love? Like, no, I, like, clapped back. I'd be like,
but maybe that is the love. Maybe that's the love of the mother that
but
we
no, I found joy of being sarcastic, and, like, my comments would be like, wow, you're so fun
But
and
why
interesting.
does Kali Ma step on men's throats? You know what I mean? I'm like,
it's still, I'm telling you, I found joy in being sarcastic. I wasn't like, I'm part of the fucking spiritual revolution of these men's consciousness
But
in that moment.
I feel like I also don't have a problem with that. I also feel like that
But
can
that's
be
fine.
a part of leading the horse to water.
But the point is that, like,
But that's my dark
I
magic
have
streak.
to be real that, like, sometimes I bring the same vibration that I am criticizing.
Yeah.
I do. And I find joy in it. And I make myself laugh. I've definitely clapped back at some comments and I said some sarcastic shit. I made myself laugh. I felt good.
But do you go into the comments and do you, like, on other people's shit? And
No,
just,
I
like,
would never initiate.
That's the difference.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It truly doesn't matter. I have never in my life initiated an argument with anyone ever. I've never initiated anger. Not once. However, if someone initiates anger with me, the vitriol that they will experience, the level of anger that they will have to witness that will come out my face directed at them is so volcanic. I have seen it in people's eyes of what have I done?
And that makes me hungry and I relate. And I think that is an expression that turns me on. And I think it's because I fundamentally believe that is an expression of the feminine that's insanitized.
It's a mirror. Because I'm like, you showed me anger, I will show you your anger back 10,000 fold. But But that does not absolve me from having the anger. And I think that's where I keep kind of going back.
Complicated.
I am not absolved of anger. I am not absolved of fucking snarky comments. I'm not absolved of being sarcastic. I'm not absolved from any of it. I do it too at times, even though I criticize it, even though I aim not to, even though it is my goal to always be like as I can.
Because we're also animals. And
because
animals
we are animals.
Gnarly.
We are gnarly.
My friend,
we're gnarly girls and we're gnarly gnats. And
I
we're
didn't even
gnarly animals.
I didn't even make that connection. My friend Lily gave me a teaching during a mushroom ceremony. I may have said this also in the witch wound episode, but the lion will always eat the lamb, and that's God too. That sentence changed me. That sentence changed me.
Yeah, but we are not lions and we are not lambs. We are all the same species.
Yeah, but isn't it so weird that like the lion and the lamb like show up a lot in like Christianity and shit?
Also, are lambs like where do lions live and where do lambs live? That's an interesting one. But you get what I'm saying. It's like we are all human. We are not a different species, and like part of being human is kind of this like animal and divine consciousness. So the divine consciousness that we want to embody and the animal consciousness that's a little more raw. And there is just like that double helix DNA is going to be part of our experience and our behavior pattern. And the point is to not be self-righteous. And to not be self-righteous when you're divine, and to not feel shame when you're animal.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, the amount of people. I don't know. We might not. This might.
What is happening?
This might
need
need to be
going to it.
This might need to be for a different episode. Let's just see. The amount of people I've sat in sessions with, specifically over the last 2 years, where they are coming into the session and being like, "This thing happened to me," and they were abused in some way, whether it be physically, emotionally. What is it when someone abuses you through your words? Verbally, thank you. Like the full spectrum of abuse, right? The full circle of abuse. And the women have come into these sessions and been like, I feel shame because instead of in this moment of being abused, I had this reaction in my animal body, and I really just want to not be reactive. I want to be more responsive, and I don't want to react to abuse. I respect that pursuit so much. I also think because nervous system and somatic healing, like fucking everything, has become so commodified and so taken by white people and misunderstood and whatever, that now there's this demonization around the animal body's reaction. And I think that is so and I have felt like the full spirit of like the like dark underworld goddesses take me over in these sessions to just be like, this is just my opinion and based on what I'm receiving from you, but that reaction that you had sounded actually deeply fucking embodied. And I think what's disembodied is the shame and the guilt around the animal body's reaction.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's an interesting, because like, again, I feel like a lot of times I've been in relationships with men when they perform anger at me. I've been with a lot of dudes, a lot of angry dudes, okay? And I obviously have a big fucking mouth, and I make men very angry at me. So, if you think that I am going to have a man be very angry at me and every time I'm just like super calm and just like, I see you're hurt, like 100%.
No, your embodied violence is inspiring.
No, I am incredibly violent. However, I then come to another place of like explanation. So I think what you're saying, and I think what's important for us to like all acknowledge, is that this push and pull between like our animal selves and our divine selves, like they both have to be analyzed, honored, felt, experienced, forgiven, loved, you know, all of these things in order for us to further our personal evolution. We cannot deny it.
And there is a reason why both the church industrial complex and the medical scientific, like the religion of science industrial complex, both meet at this point of not wanting humanity to feel and understand and have a self-concept of themselves as fully human and fully divine, with the right to access direct revelations from source, direct information from the quantum field. I mean, we've been on the telepathy tapes, and like the way that we can like all go, I mean, maybe not, we can't go meet on the hill. I do kind of feel, if you've listened to the telepathy tapes, I'm gonna let you know I'm jealous that I haven't been invited to the, what's it called? The Hill?
The Hill, yeah.
The Hill. I want to go to the Hill.
That sounds everyone who listens wants to go.
Right.
Yeah.
But isn't that interesting that like the religiousizing of science and the science religious medical industrial complex, which we could say is more left wing, and then like the church industrial complex is more right wing, both of those spaces of control do not want magic. They do not want humans to think that they are magical and powerful in this way, that they could have a direct access with God, whether that be they have to go through a priest, or they have to follow these rules, or they have to, or that doesn't exist and that's not real and it's only what we can see.
That's why the Cartesian world model has been so seductive to social control.
Wait, Cartesian?
That's what we were talking about earlier, remember? Descartes?
Yeah, but break it down again. Because I don't think I'm the only one that's like, wait, what do you mean?
It's Descartes.
I did not do well in high school, okay?
Yeah, no, it's Descartes' philosophy that we were talking earlier about the physical world, the material world.
Yeah.
So when you say magic, it's the metaphysical world. It's the like quote unquote unexplainable world. Yeah. And I think we kind of keep going back to like how threatening that is to our social control. And when I think about the gender divide, which is what we've been going on and on and on about, I do think I have to say this, by the way, because I think is it? If you're reading that whole text, I'm no.
I'm like using it as I need to reference it.
Okay.
LOL.
I'm like, that's the longest text I've ever seen. So I mean, anyone who writes in a chunk like that, is that your response?
No, someone wrote this to me out of the blue in response to something that I did.
Oh, okay. So I think that like what we all want to do in order to like honor our evolution is we need to be a part of healing. And then we have to also recognize that like as long as we're in this healing paradigm, we're going to keep calling in trauma, because you wouldn't need to heal if you weren't traumatized, right? So it's kind of ironic. It's like the cultural conversations around healing so much. And if we're talking about healing all the time, are we just like calling in more trauma and everything to be more traumatizing? Because we're always going to be healing and blah, 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 blah. So we have to get beyond both paradigms of the healing and the traumatizing. But I think it's like, when I think about these men who are so angry at women and these women who are so angry at men, I think that like the ultimate tension is that we have to like have the deep intention to understand each other.
And also that the gender divide and the threat and the hate of feminine is a bipartisan issue.
Yeah.
That's this.
Okay.
So I was in grad school. I got to tell the story. We're going to end with story time. I was in grad school. I was making work about the body and sovereignty and feminism and healing. Oh, by the way, something about healing. My friend Davis of the Rich Witch Life also gave me, this was like another like code that changed my life. Too much healing makes a dull witch. Like too much emptying out makes a dull witch. What are you filling back up with?
Yeah.
So I do like that, because I think there's like an addiction to that, like emptying out and pouring out, and like that's, yeah. Okay, I'm in grad school, I'm making this work, I'm curious, I'm investigating my trauma, I'm healing from trauma. The stuff with my mentor, that photo mentor I was talking about earlier, had only happened like a year ago. So I was like really fresh in the like tissue nervous system processing of experience. I go down to Savannah, Georgia. I am in my vibe. It is the summertime. It is hot. It is over 100 degrees. It is a hot summer night. Mm-hmm. That day I went to the beach. Didn't wear sunscreen. Got super sunburned. I've always been a bitch who likes a baggy shirt. Before it was a thing to like show your bra with the baggy shirt, I was doing that. I am a fashion icon. So
you mean wear no bra?
No, like the bralette showing like with the baggy shirt, that like then became like a thing. Okay, so I like really do. I have tracked this. My neurodivergency has tracked over time since childhood that I am a fashion icon. And I will come forward with certain expressions of my style and people will copy it. The collective copies me. It's just how it is. I don't care what you think about me thinking that about myself because that is my decision and my sovereignty to feel that way about myself.
Okay, go on.
This radical and revolutionary self-love has taken a long time to arrive at, and I hope it inspires those who resonate.
All right.
So I have a sunburn, okay? I can't wear tight clothes. It's everywhere. If you've ever been sunburned in the South, it's a thing. So I put on this big men's baggy shirt. I have a little like bralette underneath, not even a cleavage bra. Like it wasn't even, the titties weren't even pushed together.
Yeah.
It was just like a bandeau, okay?
Yeah.
Underneath a big men's shirt, wearing like jeans or shorts or something with it. So the American Legion is a bar that people would just hang out
In DC.
in Savannah, Georgia.
Oh, okay.
Which is also very strange. I think that's like the South not totally recognizing the way that it like hasn't like divested from a lot of racism, and then it like kind of reinforces it. Like the American Legion is like the cool place for the punk liberal kids to hang out. Like I do appreciate the reclaiming of that, but I also think there's fundamentally a lack of a self-awareness in that. But whatever. I didn't choose to go there. My boyfriend at the time and his friends were choosing to go there to hang out. I was like, whatever, I'm gonna go. So I walk up to the door. I'm with my boyfriend, I'm with his friends, and there's a bouncer at the door, and I'm wearing this button-down shirt and I have this little bralette on. He lets the men in, and then he stops me at the door and he says, you can't come in dressed like that. I'm like, what? He's like, your bra is showing. That's against the rules of the American Legion. So in my, like, I was maybe 23, 22, in my like early 20s self, just freshly studying feminist theory for the first time, healing my trauma, that was not a moment where I could come out of my face and be like, no, 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 no. I was like,
Okay.
frozen.
Yeah.
And I fawned and I buttoned my shirt in front of this man while looking into his eyes and then probably looking down and walked in. The men around me, including my boyfriend and his friends, who all acted like they were my friends, are hearing this happen, are watching this happen. They say nothing. They act like nothing happened. Like it didn't even happen.
Yeah.
Okay, so we go into the bar. I notice a girl at the bar. Frankly, she was hotter than me, and she was wearing like a little bralette crop top with her like high-waisted jeans and looked really cute, honestly. And so I'm like, okay, so it's not like a rule across the board. I guess it's just like a rule for the uglies. I don't know. I was also really processing a lot of like body stuff in that moment. So I was like, okay, so this girl who's hotter than me, I guess, whatever, based on societal standards, can wear her little bralette, but I have to like button up my men's shirt to my collar.
You're like a priest.
No, literally. And I'm like, obviously I also like that style. So I'm like, whatever, I guess my vibe is shifting. I'm trying to justify it. We go out on the porch. Everyone's drinking and smoking. I'm also sober at this time. So everyone's like getting fucked up and I'm sober processing this. No one is acting like this just happened. Okay, I'm like, whatever. I'm not going to make a big deal out of this. I don't want to like upset anyone. I don't want to like make a scene. I don't want to make a scene. So I'm just sitting on the porch. Okay, it's hot, it's hot, it's hot. There's smoke, there's alcohol, I'm sweating. I'm like, I'm just gonna unbutton my shirt because now I'm out on the porch. The bouncer can't see me. I'm not in the physical establishment. This is gonna be okay. So I do that and I forget because it's so hot. And then we're going to leave and I have to go to the bathroom. The bathroom is like outside of the bar, down this hallway, and at the back of the building. And there's like other businesses in this building. So the bar is just like one of the establishments in this building. So I have to walk into the bar, walk past the bouncer, and walk to the bathroom. Frankly, I'm not really like thinking about, is this guy seeing me? I unbutton my shirt again. So I go to the bathroom, I come out, and this man, this bouncer, is standing at the women's restroom door, like I don't know distance, but like down a long hallway. I would say like 100 yards, but I actually don't know how to conceptualize what that means. And he's like, I saw that you unbuttoned your shirt again.
Whoa.
You're not following the rules of the establishment. Okay,
Wow.
so now I've had some time. I've sweat. I've drank some water in the bar. I've peed. I've kind of processed this. I'm starting to get angry that no one else said anything about it. And I'm like, hey man, you know, and not to like, I don't love that I like pointed out this other woman in the bar because like frankly I love that she was wearing a bra as a shirt, but I was like, there's literally someone in your bar right now in the establishment wearing clothing that you're saying is against the dress code, but you're choosing to continue to enact control onto me. I probably didn't say it like that, but I'm like, there's literally someone in there right now and you're choosing. I'm like in the bathroom, I'm about to leave.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, hers looks like it could be a shirt and yours looks like a bra because it has lace.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Interesting. And
And
also,
so,
like, I don't believe that's a straight man if he's noticing the different textures of fabric in these bras.
yeah, like what is happening?
So
now we start arguing. Now we're yelling at each other. It escalates. We're saying fuck you. I like am coming. I'm like screaming from the street. I like walk down the hallway and like some of the men around are like trying to sort of be like, should I? None of the men know what to do because I'm just like in it. And then he tells me that I'm banned from the American Legion forever.
Whoa, respect.
Yeah. So I am making a video project at this time that is diaristic called Adults in Training. And I get into the car and I make a video just like upset about what just happened. I'm like documenting my emotions in real time. So I post this video on Facebook explaining what happened to me, the outrage, the whatever. Some people are like, yes, yes, yes. There's a lot of people who are really upset. So I get a message from one of my boyfriend's good friends who was there and saw this all happen. Mm-hmm. And he says to me, I'm going to spare you this entire message, but he sends me an Onion article. And then he's like, this is an encapsulation of not just your war against the Legion, but everything that's the problem with your generation. And then he goes on to say, my portrayal of what happened is unfair, it's off the mark, that I'm risking this man's employment, that he is an immigrant, and this is a white man also, like an attractive white man who's like a bouncer at this bar, that he's an immigrant and I am fundamentally like gonna displace him and he's not gonna have his job anymore. And he suggests that I consider that
read his actual words.
Just read it? Okay.
Yeah.
It's not that long. Sarah, this Onion article is a great encapsulation of not just your war against the Legion, but everything that's a problem with your generation. I agree with you that the bar's rules need to be revised, but I disagree with your methods because I believe they're mostly meant to draw attention to yourself. Please consider some introspective thought. Also, the amount of men who have told me that I am a narcissist and I am self-obsessed, and that is the only thing that I'm making art about, and that if my self-obsession and narcissism would get out of the way, then I could really make some feminist work. I mean, the amount of times that's been said to me is truly insane. Please consider some introspective thought going forward. Your portrayal of my friend blank is wildly off the mark, and if you affect his employment with your crusade against the Legion, we have an enormous problem with another. I suggest that you consider that the world is more complicated than you perceive it to be, and that said world might not always conform to your expectations. Please keep in mind that there are indescribable atrocities happening to women all over the world, and this really is not one of them. One of those atrocities. Baby steps, one day at a time. But seriously, don't attack my friend / landlord, so strange, for enforcing the rules at a private club run by a bunch of old Republicans and veterans. Pick your battles for real. Much love but little sympathy. I realized after I wrote this that you might think I'm a powerful male oppressing your thoughts, but you gotta know that I have been poor white trash since day one, and blank immigrated from the Ukraine. So none of these men are in any position of power. This connects back to that experience you were having with your friend and you having to be like, wait, actually, I am benefiting from white supremacy. This is an example of like a liberal punk anarchist who does not see the way that he and his friend are benefiting and participating in patriarchy. This is not someone who voted for Donald Trump. This is not an incel. This is like an actually like smart, sensitive person who was a friend, who had a real issue with me talking about what happened to me, as if what that policing is not connected to the larger atrocities that women are facing over the world.
No, if we're going to talk about the policing of women's bodies in Afghanistan, that is an example of the policing of women's bodies.
Right.
So it is the same level of consciousness, but I think we go back to what we relate to. And like I was saying in the beginning, it's like I have a propensity to relate to women more. And men have a propensity to relate to men more.
He's like, I'm white trash. This guy's white trash. We came from nothing. We can't be the oppressors.
And also, I relate to him. Like, that could be me. I could have some girl railing against me publicly, and I relate to his experience more than yours. And that's why I think this is at the crux of the gender divide, is that we are so committed to relating to what is similar to us than having curiosity about what's different than us, right? And so the same consciousness of like, I refuse to have curiosity about someone who's gender fluid or trans is the same thing as like, I refuse to have curiosity about someone who's a man or who's a woman. And I think that is where like the vibration that we can put out into the world is having genuine curiosity for everyone's experience. And like through that, that is the living example of what we're asking for. We have to live what we're asking for.
Yeah. I mean, something else that feels like essential to this story is that this man is probably like 40 years old and I was in my 20s, like my early 20s. And yet again, it's like young women, teenage girls, like the way that a lot of times, like, not that you can't be raped and molested and tortured and abused like as you age, but I think there's like a window of ideal manipulation and grapo and taking advantage of that's like from the time you start bleeding and get some tits till 27 when your front brain changes and you can arrive at new conclusions.
Yeah, and I think that
it's a big window.
It's a huge window, and it's larger than that, obviously.
Yeah.
And
it just feels like the most vulnerable window, maybe. Not, and that's I don't mean that to be a blanket statement,
but yeah, and I think what's interesting about this guy's, the example of what this guy is saying is it's belittling your experience. It's belittling your anger. It's telling you it wasn't a big deal.
Yeah.
You know, and I think this is the other thing we constantly do to each other is that if someone else's anger threatens your position of power, you belittle it versus being like, oh, well, how would I? He never asked himself how he would feel in your position. He only asked himself how he would feel if he was in that guy's position.
Right.
So it's like, that is the problem, is like when we're only extending empathy and compassion to those that remind ourselves of ourselves. It's the self-involvement.
Yeah. Which is not curious.
No. I'm hungry.
I'm too hungry. I too am hungry.
All right. I think we went some places today. We didn't solve the world's problems, but we did our best to
talk about it.
I love you.
I love you too. Tell us what you think. Like, comment, share with us, send us messages. If there's follow-up episodes that you want, if there's like something where you're like, oh, I'd love to go deeper on this, or I'd love you guys to clarify your thoughts around this, or whatever. Like, this podcast is an ongoing conversation.
A gnarly one.
A real gnarly one.
Bye.
Peace. It sounded like the burp came out of my vagina. That was good timing.